so when we're setting up the start for the 3-cone, there's a couple big things. Butt's gotta be high, a lot of pressure on the lead hands, okay? A lot, like 80% weight should be forward on the hand, so that if you pull that weight out, you've gotta go forward, you know, to make up for that miss with the hands, okay? Now, in the 40, if your left leg is the lead leg, the difference on the 3-cone or the L drill here is that our lead leg will be our right leg. I'm even thinking about this right now. It can be challenging to set this up. The first thing here, my right leg will be the lead leg on the 3-cone. So I go back so that my big toe is in line with my heel. Okay, that's the first aspect. The second thing, I wanna get my knee in line here with the middle of my foot here, almost exactly on my arch. Okay, now, when I get set, and if my right is forward, my right arm is back, okay? When I get set here, I wanna crawl forward, come back. I want my hand to form a bridge here, and I wanna have like a little bit, around 90 degrees on the lead leg here to help me project forward, okay? I want my ankles to be stiff. Now, I'm gonna get into this position here, and I wanna get set and dig in where I've got like 80 to 90% of my weight on the lead leg, 10 to 20% on the back leg. And then the whole big point here is to think drive. Like that first stride is to drive very, very far. Now, the big aspect here is that because my right leg is forward, that's actually the leg that I'm stronger on my cut when I would be planting and getting out of it. That's the reason why we're gonna do that. So Connor is gonna demonstrate. He actually has his left leg is his lead leg in the 40, so he's got to do the same thing as myself in the 3-cone. So right foot back first, no, other way. Yeah, so you go right foot back to the heel. No, go, so put your, yeah, so the right big toe goes back in line with this point. A little further, there you go. Okay, there you go. So you can see that troubleshooting, good. Now the left knee to the instep of your right foot. There you go, perfect. So Connor's got his left knee a little forward. I think he could move that left knee back. And again, you're gonna be about shoulder width apart. So let's move that left foot back like 2 inches. Okay, that's good, that's good. Now, butt up, move that right hand back. Now, yeah, there you go. Okay, go. Good, good. That's a start. That's the whole goal here, is that we set this up. I could see where Connor has some issues, where we could sort of break down his heel dropped on the start there a little bit. We could get a little bit more load forward, which will help him be a little bit more, will have more projection really on that start. But this is the skill and the technique that we've got to start with. So let's go through this one more time. See if Connor can remember how to get that right foot back. There you go. Left knee, perfect. Right there. Okay, that's the start. Now he's learning it. Now he's going to execute this a lot better. Butt comes up. Good. There you go. That's the start to the 3-cone. So setting up the 3-cone drill, the biggest aspect here is ideally you would be on a football field. If you're not on a football field, we have to measure out 5 yards each direction. Okay, so that's the whole goal here, is that we are going to look at the first start, and we like to use a pylon. When we've been to pro days, typically you're going to see the touchdown pylons used for what you're going to be running around, which can be challenging when we're actually executing that technique. But we'll have a pylon here as our starting point. Okay, this is going to go 5 yards forward, and then that L will end up shaping over. Well, you have 5 yards across here. So you can measure this with a tape measure. You can measure this with your feet. You should try to be, as precise as possible. One of the benefits of being on a football field is that it's measured for you. Okay, so the whole goal here is that you have 5 yards each direction. Now, if we're measuring this, if we're looking at this as far as measuring in time, the biggest aspect is that as soon as the athlete removes their hand and they start to project forward, that's when the clock's got to start. That's when you're going to hit the start button. Okay, if we're looking at timing through that handheld position. Okay, so that has to be the big goal. And then as soon as their chest breaks, this imaginary wall back at the finish, that's when you stop. Okay, so the whole point there. Another big aspect, if the athlete knocks this over, I recommend redoing it. Okay, if you're at a combine or a pro day, or even if you're at a collegiate combine or a high school combine, you should be running this as smoothly as possible with minimal disruptions. And that means that if this gets knocked over, it should be a redo. Okay, that's a big factor. And then finally, if you're going to be doing laser time, most lasers will actually have a 3-cone setup, or they will have a shuttle setup, anything like that where it's different from the 40. The fortunate part about the 3-cone setup on a laser, and we use a system from Vald, is that it's easy to just have the start and the finish be the same. Okay, so inside the system, you can actually execute and set up the software so that you're starting and you're finishing through the same beam. Okay, so that's relatively easy to set up. Now we're gonna get into some of the technical aspects. So when we're executing the technique around the 3-cone, we have to think about this as a closed skill. Okay, so what that means is that it's something that's not changing. It's the same test every time. So we can essentially execute this as well as possible because it's something that we can just practice and practice and practice and get really, really good at. So the biggest thing when we're doing this, okay, is that from the start, as we mentioned, you're gonna start with the opposite foot as the lead compared to the 40. Now, the big thing here is I'm gonna go forward here, is that we wanna think it's gonna be 4 steps. It's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm gonna touch, okay? I'm gonna touch with that outside hand. This hand doesn't go down. Outside hand, inside does not touch. Don't touch with the inside, okay? Now, that was 4 strides. Now I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, touch, okay? Then I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Big thing here is I wanna go 7, 8, 9. And I can, after I hit that 9, I wanna bring it home. And the big aspect here is that it's okay to get a little wide here, because if I can get a little wide, I can cut this hard and get a really linear path here when I'm at a higher speed, okay? And that's when you'll see, you know, some of the best guys get sub 7 when they start to cut from that high position, because they can execute that very, very quickly. They might be used to running curves in track and field or anything like that. So it's something to really hone in on, is at 7, 8, 9, you get wide and you bring it home. So Connor, let's see this. Again, you don't have to do blazing speed, but be respectable, Connor. So we gotta think 4 strides to 3. Okay, so one thing even here, Connor got a little bit stuttery here, and he was a little over that white line. We wanna think about when we're doing the drill to hit it on the button, okay? So if, you know, taking Connor's movement here, and again, I showed him, you know, he went through this at a slow pace. We've gotta think 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So that's where, as a coach, we can look at this and say, think about 3, 4 more of a jump cut. It's like drive long on 1, second step sets you up, jump cut, 3, 4. Then it's a big drive to 3, that 2, 3 coming back is a jump cut. Then out here, a little bit tighter with a little bit smoother strides. Make sure it's 7, and then almost here where we go 7, 8, 9 if we can, okay, to set that up. So you can go, the other thing here is Connor hasn't gone like super, super quick. Oftentimes, once you start to get a little bit higher speed, the technique sort of gets cleaned up. So when you hit reps at like 60, 65, 70% for like 15 reps, just getting that comfort, then when you go full throttle, that's when you start to see that the technique's really laid in and they can actually do this at a very high speed with like basically perfect precision. So right arm back. Okay, not bad. Big thing too here is just letting him at this point think through here a little bit smoother. Okay, and this is just something we've got to keep hammering home. We keep going through this and you keep focusing on 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Big one then is that after you go back here, 7, 8, 9, bring it home as hard as possible. That's the 3-cone drill.